Last year, I predicted the targets for every single fantasy relevant player in the NFL. Now it's time to go back and see how accurate I was with those predictions. Let's start with the two that I was most accurate with, just to build a little bit of credibility here. First one, Curtis Samuel. I was with a game-adjusted accuracy, meaning I predicted for 16 games from Curtis Samuel. He ended up playing 14. Take that 16-game score, adjust it for 14 games, essentially 100% accurate. The number comes out to 46 expected targets. He got 46 targets in real life. And it was pretty clear to me last year that Curtis Samuel was going to come in much worse than ADP was suggesting on Underdog. The Bills don't throw the ball enough, and he isn't that good anymore. He was getting drafted next to players like Jake Ferguson, who had 86 targets, Cortland Sutton, 135 targets, Brock Bowers, 153 targets, who admittedly, I did not draft Brock Bowers enough last year. Tyler Lockett had a worse season than I predicted, but still 74 targets to Curtis Samuel's 46. Njoku, 97 targets. Samuel was not good in his range. That was very clear. Predicted that, told you that. Happy I got that one right. The second one would be Mike Evans. Now, Mike Evans, another 100% adjusted accuracy, technically 99.57 because of a decimal rounding. But I expected with this adjustment 110 targets, got 110 targets. Mike Evans was going to be Mike Evans again this year. It was kind of easy to suspect, but a lot of people weren't giving Evans a lot of credit, especially in his ADP range. Dontavian Wicks. Now with Wicks, significantly less accurate than these other two. 76.32% accuracy. I expected 58 targets. He actually got up to 76 at his ADP of 123. But even with that, I was correct in that Wicks was much worse than the other players in his range. We're looking at people like Jacoby Myers, 129 targets. Jerry Jeudy, 145 targets. Josh Downs, 107 targets. And Brandon Cooks, 54 targets in 10 games. So while I did come under on Wicks, the thought process that, hey, there are better people in Wicks' range stayed true even with his improved performance from what I expected. Next, Amon-Ra. Amon-Ra was pretty surprising to me this year. He came in 20 targets lower than I expected. I expect him to get up, kind of improve up to the 164 range. Only 141. For the most case, these top receivers, the only one that vastly kind of surged past, at least these first round receivers, their expected targets, was going to be Jamar Chase. He vastly outdid his numbers. Now, he's not the only one. We'll talk about one guy later who I really loved that surprised even me, but we'll save that for later. Now, Amon-Ra still got there if you drafted him, but targets were a little under from what people expected. Now, the next two, let's group together. We'll talk about JSN and Tyler Lockett. JSN first because I liked JSN. Did not like him as well as he performed, to be honest. I expected about 113 targets. He came in around 137. Came in above expectation as a player that I was looking to buy more of in drafts. Now, Tyler Lockett is really he's one of the worst ones here. He was my second worst accuracy of the players that we'll discuss today, and he came in pretty significantly below what I expected. Only a 48% accuracy. With JSN, it was 82% accuracy, but a positive, difference there in that he was a buy, had more targets than I expected. Tyler Lockett, pretty negative. 48% accuracy. I expected 112 targets for him as well. Only actually got around 74. Lockett is point blank my worst prediction of this list. And it's something that I'm going to have to learn from moving forward. And that there was a young wide receiver that I really liked, but I honestly expected a little bit too much out of the Seattle Seahawks offense under a new regime that was no longer Pete Carroll, who Geno Smith saw a lot of success with. Now, the next one, another very accurate one, 94.83% accurate, Marvin Harrison Jr. Marvin Harrison Jr., I kind of was telling people, at his ADP of 13.4, there was way too much target competition in the Cardinals offense. And Trey McBride doesn't make this list because he wasn't someone that I was heavily praising, but he got way more targets than I thought he would. Even with that, Harrison kind of still came in about where I expected. I expected 110 targets. He got 116 targets. Now, there's a player I'm going to jump a little bit across my list here just because they meaningfully should go together. He's not someone that I outright mentioned in this previous video, but he was someone that caught my eye, and this is honestly, it's not something I can take a lot of credit for because it wasn't on the video. If I don't go out and tell you, hey, this is someone I'm interested in, it can't really count. But just one of the most ridiculous, and I mean ridiculous, target outputs this past season came out of New York with Malik Neighbors. Now let me find the exact numbers here so that I give you the data, the facts that you want. Malik Neighbors had 170 targets as a rookie. Now, New York clearly did not have any other options. You knew that going into the season. But Malik Neighbors was far and away just a better choice in drafts last year, best ball drafts, than Marvin Harrison. You got him over 10 picks later. The ADP I have from June, it looks like pick 26, and he had 60 more targets. I only expected him around 110, kind of same thing as Neighbors, same thing as Harrison, that these rookie receivers typically aren't going to command that elite target share. I mean, 170 is preposterous for a rookie, and it shows you just kind of how weak the Giants wide receiver room was. But that is something to consider, especially this next year. I still believe in Marvin Harrison, but Neighbors is probably going to clear Harrison, and I expect this season will be the season that you should draft Marvin Harrison. Everyone's going to latch on to the, rightfully so, amazing production out of Neighbors as a rookie. He's going to be in this league for a while, but I think Harrison might see kind of an overreaction in ADP simply because people are upset with his rookie numbers. Next one, George Pickens. Another one that came in above expectation as someone I was looking to buy, let's say. 84.75% adjusted accuracy because he did not play every single game. I expected about 87 targets with that adjustment. He actually came in at 103. But to be honest, that doesn't mean much of anything. George Pickens was not a good buy this year because his yardage and TDs both went down. I expected the Russell Wilson effect to have somewhat more of a more positive effect on Pickens, mainly his TD department, but it really didn't have an effect. So while Pickens was listed as a target buy, he was not necessarily a hit in this department. Now, Brandon Ayuk, this is kind of one that I was accurate with on a per-game basis, but there's not too much to draw from it because of his injury. Regardless, 87.61% accurate with per-game adjustment, came around to 41 expected targets. He got 47 actual targets. The main thing to note with Ayuk was that there was a noted bump because the whole trade scenario earlier in this offseason, but not going to delve too much into that right now. TJ Hawkinson, another one I was very happy to have been, at least on a per-game basis, correct about. The end-season numbers, not totally there because he played not enough games, essentially. But my original target expectation was based on a full season rather than trying to predict how many games he would play. So I really was trying to hit that per-game mark, and that came in at a 94.88% accuracy. With the per-game adjustment, came into 59 expected targets, actually got 62. And again, that target expectation originally was playing for a full season, so I expected 100 targets across 17 games, expecting that, hey, I'm not a doctor, I have no idea when TJ Hawkinson's going to play, so let's take a per-game expectation into account. Came out to be a very good expectation for him. I do think this year, part of the belief with TJ Hawkinson as well was that a rookie quarterback might lend himself more to TJ Hawkinson when likely Jettis is going to get double covered. Defenses are not going to let JJ just get some easy targets. We might see that this season. Time will tell. He's had a year to kind of get it under his belt, and obviously the Vikings are going to be good no matter who lines up at quarterback. We found that out this season with Sam Darnold. Next one, Drake London. Another very accurate score here. Before next one, I'll give a little bit of a spoiler alert. We'll talk about my worst expectation with a slight asterisk for the next one. But let's talk about Drake London first. 98.1% accurate. I expected 155 targets. He got 158. London, great player. He continued to do well regardless of who was throwing to him. It'll be very interesting to see what the Falcons do this year with quarterback. Supposedly they're going to keep Kirk, even with the hefty price tag, just to let Penix kind of get a good mentor, I'm guessing, and have the highest paid backup in the league. I don't know. It'll be very interesting, but London did still continue to do decently well, even with Penix coming in at quarterback towards the end of the season. Now, the the worst error, let's say, this year was Jahan Dotson. Instead of giving you the accuracy number because it is just not correct with how wrong I was, to be honest, we'll give you the percentage error. I was 220% wrong on Jahan Dotson, specifically 227% wrong. Now, this prediction did come in pre-trade, so before he got dealt to the Eagles. I was a Jahan Dotson fan. I still kind of am. I don't know what went wrong. He played well as a rookie. I liked his tape coming out of college. Regardless, I expected 108 targets from him. This year, he only got 33. So, yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. It did come in before the Commanders opted to trade him, but clearly there was something there that I didn't see, and that they traded him away for popcorn, and he played like popcorn this year. Next one, Adam Thielen. Another guy I really did like. He's one that also came in above expectation. Total numbers aren't that great, though, because of some missed games. I expected around 53 targets. He ended up getting 62. At his late ADP of 158, we'll kind of take what we get there with Thielen. Now let's get into about 4 players that I came in a little too hot on. First one, Michael Pittman. I really thought that he might get pretty heavily targeted, especially deep, by Anthony Richardson. Did not expect to find out, at least allegedly, according to Pat McAfee, Anthony Richardson basically was not approaching this like it was his job. He was missing treatment after his injury, whole bunch of stuff that you just don't expect to see out of an NFL quarterback. So hand up, nobody knew that. I didn't know that. Michael Pittman, though, about 84% accuracy. 84% accurate. Michael Pittman, though, about 84% accurate. Expected with an adjusted per game rate. 128 targets, came in at 111. But point blank, Pittman did not have that great of a season. Another miss there, admittedly. Evan Ingram, kind of just chalk it up to an injury woe here. Ingram, with an adjusted accuracy, I expected 76 targets. He came in at 64, only 81% accurate. Ingram came back to earth this year, partial because Brian Thomas Jr. played way better than expected. I mean, Brian Thomas Jr. arguably had the best rookie wide receiver season. It flew under the radar for me until I went back and looked at all these numbers. Brian Thomas Jr. was insanely good this year, potentially even better than Neighbors with just how efficient he was as well. Now, Chris Olave, before making an adjustment to this adjustment, because the number works off of games started, before the adjustment, Olave around 50% accurate. That's not necessarily true because 2 of those games that he started were really misses. He only played 2 and 8 snaps. So adjusting those 2 games out, we come up to 87.7% accurate. So with that second adjusted expectation, came into about 49 expected targets. His actual targets were only 44. So on a per game basis, adjusting for those 2 games that count as games started, but he did not play at all. He played like 1 drive in each of those. We still got about the per game targets correct with Olave, but just a really rough season injury-wise for Olave, who's a player I still like. I'm really just getting a little concerned about the concussions. Hopefully he can learn from a player we mentioned earlier, Tyler Lockett. Lockett just goes down whenever he catches the ball at this stage of his career. I'm kind of hoping we just see that out of Olave. Now, Deebo Samuel was another one that was discussed because of the, trade discussion with Ayuk earlier in the season. About 87% accurate. I expected 71. He came in at 81. Deebo, though, the main conversation with him in that previous video was, hey, get a little bit of exposure to Deebo because if Ayuk is traded, there's going to be about like a 20 target, adjustment that needs to be made. But ended up not happening. Regardless, the, Ayuk staying accuracy was pretty decent. We already touched on Mike Evans earlier. Marvin Mims, pretty good. I was only 6 targets off. Now, granted, it's easier to be smaller numbers off when you are dealing with a smaller total. Marvin Mims, I expected 58 targets. He came in at 52. A player that I really liked just for kind of the upside if an injury did hit Cortland Sutton or something like that in the Denver Broncos offense. But I'm pretty happy to see that even on these kind of lower expected players that I'm bringing up, we're getting fairly close. We're not being too overly optimistic or pessimistic. The final one, Another one that was a very late ADP. Let me get the exact number on that ADP for you. Elijah Mitchell. Now, not Elijah Mitchell, talking about running backs. Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore had an ADP of 213. 213. Looking at these other expectations, I expected 80 targets. He came in, just vastly better than the other players around him. Looking at their actual targets, he's about, 20, 40, 60, 80 targets better than some of the people around him. Like, he came in at 102 targets this season. People around him, Rondale Moore is hurt, so you can't count him. Khalif Raymond, 22 targets. Kendrick Bourne, 38 targets. He was hurt, though. Zach Ertz, admittedly, another one that I did not give enough credit to. 91 targets, but still more. Outpaced him. Michael Mayer, Trey Palmer, Alec Pierce, Greg Dortch, Jatavian Sanders, more outpaced all of these people. And he did so to a rate that was higher than I expected. I expected about 80 targets on a full game season. He got to 102. Now, did that specifically translate into massive fantasy value? In best ball, I'd say he kind of got there. You have games of 20, 18, 16, 10. That's really all you want when you're throwing your late round dart throw against the wall. And you have to, if you're chasing at the end of drafts, you should be chasing off of targets. The volume is what's going to get you that random spike week more often than not, just betting on, hitting a dice roll. In total, for all players that came in above 40 targets this season, I ended up being 76% accurate. Definitely a number that we're going to want to improve on this season, but it's also a number that has to be put in with some context. Obviously, you're going to have a higher percentage error on these lower target players. For being a couple targets off of someone like, Jalen McMillan, Jonathan Mingo, Matt Collins, I'm going to face a larger percentage error on those players for being slightly off than the up top ones. We can quickly run through some of the players who weren't mentioned, but I was very accurate and inaccurate with, at least the ones of meaningful note. Najee Harris, I was 100% accurate, kind of a random one there, but we got there, I guess. Devonta Smith, 96% accurate. DK Metcalf, 97% accurate. Romeo Doubs, 98% accurate. Deontay Johnson, 94% accurate. Tyler Conklin and Troy Franklin, 94% accurate. Rome Odunze, 94% accurate. Noah Fant, 93% accurate. Adonai Mitchell, 92% accurate. Tank Dell, even with the injury adjustment because it's a per game basis, 91% accurate. DJ Moore, 90% accurate. Travis Kelce, 90% accurate. CeeDee Lamb, 90% accurate. Justin Jefferson, 88% accurate. List goes on. But for the ones that I really missed on, at least above 40 targets this year, Kyle Pitts. I'll admit, Kyle Pitts has been the bane of my existence. I have him in Dynasty. In Dynasty, at least, I've just committed to I'm going to die on this Kyle Pitts hill, even if it saps every fiber of my being out of me. It's going to be rough, but we'll get there. Noah Brown, another one that a big miss, but he's kind of moved around a little bit here and there. Devon Achane, pretty inaccurate. Did not expect the level of targets that he ended up sharing. Zach Ertz, we mentioned before, 47% accurate with him, so that's another miss. Let's look for some big ones, though. Khalil Shakir, I did not expect to see the bump. I gave him a slight bump for improvement, but I did not think that he would take kind of the lion's share of this Bills offense, so he's one that I definitely missed out on. Wan'Dale Robinson, very surprised. Kind of one of the highest probably because of bad QB plays, just inaccurate throws, so the targets don't really matter as much. Wan'Dale got up to 140 targets. That's crazy. So think about Wan'Dale next year because the numbers don't line up, but he's clearly, at least in the current wide receiver room, I guess, talented enough to be getting 140 targets. I don't expect the Giants defense to make a massive leap. Granted, they will be likely having a rookie quarterback, but Wan'Dale's going to be the slot guy. You'd figure he's going to be getting peppered with some easy targets with a rookie quarterback, but Wan'Dale did not expect that. Jerry Jeudy, 55% accurate. That's partial because of the Amari Cooper trade. He really bumped up after that, but what are you going to do? Jacoby Myers, I was only 60% accurate with Jacoby Myers, even despite me not fully believing that Brock Bowers is going to get that crazy season. So he's another one, 62% accurate on Brock Bowers. Just kind of way under on how much the Raiders offense was going to throw. Granted, Devontae Adams did leave that team, so just some unforeseen ones there. But yeah, overall, I'll take the kind of C+ mark, C+ mark across all players. I am fairly happy that at least the players that I singularly noted out is, hey, avoid this person or get this person. We had a much higher target accuracy. And this year, I hope to vastly improve on that number. I mean, at a minimum, I'd like to get to the 80 mark. Hope you'll join with me later this season when we come back, go through all these numbers again, and kind of predict for this next upcoming season. You know I'll always be doing this. I'll always be back. Fantasy football is in my blood, and I know it is for you people too if you're watching this. So I appreciate you for taking the time going through all this with me, and I hope we're back next season better than ever. Thank you. Have a good one.